See below, storm wind blow.
Chapter 4. The Pale Salt. Senara did not answer Tavaro. He had asked what they should do, which was a healer's least favorite kind of question. People asked it when every useful choice had already been ruined. They asked it beside beds, beside graves, beside doors that would not open again. What do we do? Usually the answer was smaller than anyone wanted. Hold this cup. Boil more cloth. Tell the mother before the child wakes. Do not move him yet. Do not lie to the living. The dead were past caring. Tavaro sat on the courtyard bench, with one hand pressed against the child mark beneath his rib binding, and the other hanging loose at his side. The fresh bandage at his wrist had already bloomed red. He looked too large for the little stone square, too damaged for the legend people kept trying to make from him. The oil bowl above the washing basin caught the salt dried in his beard, and the dark hollow under his ribs. Below them, the harbour bells rang again. What? Silence. What? Not warning, not storm. A night call for loading, counting, waiting. Senara had heard that rhythm during evacuations after reef fires, during the old southern flood, during the great turtle beaching, when half the capital had stood with ropes around their waists and tried to push 10 tons of confused shell back toward tide. This bell was worse. This bell was choice. Tavaro looked toward the sound. Senara. No, he blinked. I had not asked. You were about to ask if I was angry. Were you going to answer? No. Efficient. She took the bloodied cloth from his lap and dropped it into the wash bowl. The water took the red and thinned it into pink. Great griefs entered the workhouse in bright color and spread until they became part of everything. The thought brought the old stink of fever back so sharply she had to grip the basin edge. Salt, sweat, old vomit, charred, bitter leaf, the sour sweetness of bodies losing water faster than she could return it. The pale salt had not begun with death. It began with a fisherman licking his cracked lips and laughing that the sea had climbed inside him. Senara had been cutting a shell shard from a woman's heel when the man came in. He was broad, loud, embarrassed by attention, with shoulders burnt dark from years on the water. His wife had brought him by the ear, because men in love often survived longer when dragged. His mouth has gone white, the wife said. The fisherman grinned around pale lips. I kissed a wave. It was jealous. Senara had been younger then, not young enough to be stupid, old enough to resent how much stupidity remained possible. She took his chin between her fingers and turned his face toward the light. White at the lips, fine crust at the corners, gums dry, tongue thick, breath fast. Fever? She asked. No, he said. Yes, his wife said. The body agreed with the wife. Senara set the shell shard aside, washed her hands twice, then had him sit. Water first, always water first. When the mouth dried that way, he drank 2 cups and asked for a third. Before she had finished checking his pulse, his skin was hot. His pulse was wrong. Not fast in the usual fever pattern. It beat hard, then skipped like a frightened thing. She sent for Oren. He came from the council house, smelling of ink, rain, and smoke, his white shot hair bound back badly, as if he had tied it while walking. Oren always looked as though 3 thoughts had arrived at once, and none had agreed to wait. He had healer hands, even when he was holding a law tablet. Thin fingers, scarred thumbs, nails kept short. He could set a bone while lecturing a chieftain on drainage rights, and somehow make both parties feel improved. He looked at the fisherman's mouth and did not laugh. That was when Senara first felt fear. Bodies made patterns. Oren had taught her that before she could write her own name straight, 1 sick man was a man, 2 were a question, 3 were a pattern trying to hide. By sunset, they had 5. By morning, 9. By the 3rd day, the workhouse no longer had enough mats. The pale salt gave the mouth its name first. Lips went white, tongues swelled, gums cracked. Then the eyes sank, the skin heated, the hands shook, and the thirst became monstrous. People drank until they vomited and begged for more before the bowl left their reach. Some sweated salt dust through their skin. Some stopped sweating at all, which was worse. The worst cases seized in the night, backs bowed, fingers hooked, mouths foaming pale. Children failed quickly. Old people failed quietly. Young adults fought longest and broke hearts by seeming to improve before morning took them. Senara learned to hate dawn. The first week, they worked as they had been trained. Separate mats, boiled water, fresh cloth, mouth rinses, cooling stones, bitter root for fever, salt bark in careful doses because too much closed the throat. Keep the sick shaded, keep them turn, keep waste away from wells. Burn bedding that could not be clean. The second week, they argued over theories because arguing still felt like power. Bad shellfish, a fouled spring, more deep vapor carried in from southern winds, reef mineral sickness after red rain, punishment from the three near gods. No, not punishment, a warning. No, not a warning, a test. No, not a test, because gods who tested children deserved no shrines. Senara said that last one aloud after a 6-year-old died with both hands locked in her hair. The room went silent around her. Oren, standing beside the door with a dead boy in his arms, said, "We will discuss theology after we have enough cups." No one mentioned it again. Senara had seen pieces of this before. Not the whole fever, not the pattern. Pieces. A healer from Outer Lower had written of white mouth after red tide, and a thirst that emptied cistern jars. A North Island birthkeeper had sent 3 lines about salt crust on children's lashes after a season of hot rain. Reef settlements had stories of boys coming back from shell pools with dry tongues and shaking hands. Scattered reports, loose tablets, old women's remedies, fishermen's warnings, half-memories carried by people who only came to the workhouse when a body had already become urgent. Her survey bundle had been packed for that. Outer Lower fever roots, North Island birth herbs, cistern sickness after red rain, reef bite remedies, venom moss trials, salt mouth cases, empty specimen pouches, letters waiting for local healers who knew things the Vial records did not. She had meant to leave before the dry season. Then Tavaro had come in with his wrist seam torn nearly to the elbow. Then the council needed great work records copied for the younger keepers. Then Lapo had needed help rebuilding the water shelf because he had made the first one crooked and refused to admit it. Then Oren had said one more week. One more week had become a season. Now Tavaro had generations of notes on the smell of torn skybone sheath, and pale salt entered through the mouth, with 3 rumors and no map. Senara had meant to collect mortal remedies before another mortal body became a surprise. She did not say that aloud. A healer who wasted breath on regret stole it from the sick. By the 3rd week, people stopped arguing. The capital moved differently. No one touched another person, unless they had to. Mothers kept children from cousins. Lovers slept facing away from each other and pretended it was for airflow. Market stalls thinned. The old storytellers stopped gathering by the south steps. The sea, which usually filled every hour with work, sat beyond the harbour like an insult. Tavaro did not come. At first, no one said that aloud. People asked around it, "Has there been word from the West Reach? Did any cutter see the first Oathbound? Would Moorspawn carry fever? Does the Skybone line feel sickness in the water?" They asked because questions were safer than accusation. Oren sent riders across the raised islands, then boats, then signal fires. Tavaro was somewhere beyond the western reefs, hunting a brood that had taken 3 cargo crews and a child from a shore pool. He was always somewhere doing something that mattered. That truth had very poor bedside use. Lapo believed he would come. Lapo had believed in Tavaro with the clean stupidity of boys who had once been lifted into the air by him. He was still young enough then to make hope look like an argument. He carried water until his shoulders bruised from the yoke. He washed fever bowls until his hands cracked. He sat outside the sick room and told children's stories Tavaro had told him though he made most of them worse by adding impossible details. Tavaro eating a storm. Tavaro wrestling the moon down to polish it. Tavaro raising an island shaped like a sleeping pig, because the near gods dared him. Senara told him to stop lying to the sick. Lapo said, "They like the pig. They need water. They can have both." He smiled at her then, and she nearly threw a cup at him because love made people careless, and she was afraid all the time. Riva came with broth, clean cloth, and the kind of silence that made fools step aside. She put food in Senara's hand without asking whether Senara wanted it. "Eat," Riva said. "I am working. Chew while working. Your jaw is not holding anyone's pulse." Senara ate, because the alternative was Riva standing there until every patient in the room noticed. Riva checked Lapo's water yoke with 2 fingers, saw the bruises beneath his collar, and said nothing until he tried to lift again. "Half jars," she said. "I can carry full. You can carry sense, too. But you keep setting it down." He flushed. "People need water. People need you not," collapsed beside it. He obeyed for half a day. Then he carried full jars again. By the 4th week, even Lapo stopped telling stories. Oren gathered the council beneath the old sail roof near the harbour. Senara did not attend. She had 12 patients in the heat room and 4 apprentices too tired to count properly. Oren came to the workhouse after dark with his face set. "I am taking 3 boats west," he said. Senara had been grinding fever leaf. The pestle stopped in her hand. No, he washed his hands in the basin, because Oren would obey medicine, even while planning madness. Tavaro may not know. He may be dead. Then I need that word too. You will carry sickness to another island. We take no one fevered. You may carry it anyway. Then we take the empty west route, and do not land unless we find him. She stared at him. He did not look away. Oren was not a large man. He had never needed size. He had the endurance of woven cord and the irritating calm of a man who could hold grief without mistaking it for instruction. That night, grief was instructing him. "You will die out there," she said. "Perhaps that is not a plan." "No." "Then stay." He touched the table edge, careful not to touch her. Everyone had become careful about touch. "If he can help, and I do not seek him, I will hear that for the rest of my life. You will not hear anything if you are dead." "I know." "Then do not make me say it twice." His face changed. She had hurt him. She wanted him hurt enough to stay. He looked through the open wall toward the rows of fever mats. "I have asked Ivara. I have asked Aeon. I have asked Marath. I have made offerings, burned them correctly, burned them wrong in case correctness was the problem, and shouted into the road shrine until my throat went. That is not medicine." "No, you taught me that. I taught you many things I now find inconvenient." Her mouth tightened. He smiled a little. It nearly broke her. "Stay," she said. The word came out smaller than she meant. Personal, useless. Oren heard it as both, and answered the way he always did, when choice had already hardened in him. "I come back with him," he said, or with word. Senara looked down at the bowl of fever leaf. Her hands were shaking, and she did not have time for shaking. "Bring water. If you cannot bring either, I will." He left before dawn. Lapo watched the boats go from the harbour wall. Senara did not. She was inside with a girl whose fever had begun to seize her lungs. The girl died before the boats cleared the outer reef. After that, time lost honesty. The workhouse became a place of numbers, because names took too long to mourn. 7 on the east mats. 4 needing mouth. Wash each quarter bell. 2 on death watch. 1 birth, because fever did not stop labor. 3 apprentices down with shaking hands and white lips, moved from workers to patients before they could protest. Senara slept sitting up with her back against the medicine shelves. She woke whenever breath changed. Sometimes she woke because breath had stopped. Lapo fell sick near the end of the 5th week. He hid it first. Of course he did. He had learned from Tavaro, which was one more thing she could resent when energy allowed. He kept his lips wet, avoided bright light, smiled with his mouth closed. He carried 1 water jar too many and dropped it in the courtyard. It broke He stood over the pieces, staring down as if the jar had betrayed him. Senara crossed the yard and touched his cheek. Hot. He said, "It is the sun." She slapped him, not hard. Enough. His eyes filled more from shame than pain. "Matt," she said, "I can still carry water." "Matt, I am fine." "Matt, or I will put you down in front of everyone." He looked past her. The courtyard had gone still. Apprentices, patients, a mother holding a fevered baby. Everyone had turned. Lapo's shoulders folded. He went to the mat. Riva arrived before the second fever bell. Someone must have run to Smoke House Lane. Senara did not ask who. Riva came through the courtyard gate carrying a covered bowl and a knife at her belt. Her hair had escaped its tie. Her hands were clean, which meant she had washed them before entering. Good. She saw Lapo on the mat. Her face did not change. That was how Senara knew she was afraid. "Out," Senara said. "No, you can watch from the screen. He is mine before he is your patient. Then help him live by obeying the person treating him." Riva's mouth hardened. For one breath, Senara thought she would refuse. Then Riva set the bowl beside the shelf, rolled her sleeves and said, "Tell me what to carry." For 2 days, Lapo was a good patient because he was too ashamed to resist. On the third, the thirst took him. By the fourth, he no longer knew them. He called Riva by the name he had used as a child. He called for father, then for Tavaro, then for water, then for no one at all. He bit through his tongue. He clawed at the mat. He asked whether the pig island had sunk. Riva stayed behind the birth screen and tore clean cloth into strips until her fingers blistered. Senara worked. That was all. Cool cloth. Turn him. Check the pulse. Water by drops. Fever leaf. Salt bark. Stop when the throat tightens. Start again when it opens. Press the jaw closed when spasms threaten the tongue. Keep the fingers from clawing at skin. Wash. Count. Breathe. Again. At dawn on the 6th day, Lapo seized so hard that 2 apprentices could not hold him. Senara climbed across his body, pinned his shoulders with her knees, and pressed folded leather between his teeth before he bit through what remained of his tongue. Riva moved toward the mat. Senara did not look up. "Stay. He is choking. He is seizing. Stay." Riva stopped. Lapo stared up at Senara, with eyes gone too wide, too bright, too empty. Then he stopped fighting. For one breath, she thought he had died. He had not. The breath returned, thin and ragged. She bent over him and pressed her forehead to his. "Do not," she said. "Do not make me carry this, too." His skin burned against hers. Outside, someone began shouting from the shore. Senara ignored it. Shouting came every day now. Death, arrival, argument, grief. Someone insisting shrine water had cured a cousin, and therefore Senara was hiding medicine. She ignored everything that did not enter the workhouse with a body attached. The shouting moved closer. Feet pounded up the road. Eri, much younger then, and still inclined to panic with her whole face, appeared in the doorway. Boat. Senara did not lift her head. Whose? Oren's. The world narrowed to the heat of Lapo's brow beneath hers. "Is Tavaro with them?" she asked. Eri did not answer quickly enough. Senara closed her eyes. "Is Tavaro with them?" No. The word passed through the room and landed nowhere. There was no space left for it. Senara climbed off Lapo's mat. Her legs had gone numb from kneeling. She nearly fell and caught herself on the wall. Riva stood on the other side of the screen. Her hands were full of torn linen. She had heard. She did not speak. Oren came through the courtyard with 2 men behind him, and no one else. 11 had left. 3 returned. He should have looked broken, storm-beaten, ashamed. He did not. He looked changed. His hair had gone mostly white in the weeks since he left. His shoulders were thinner. His feet were bare and torn. Salt had dried in the folds of his clothes. His hands, those exact healer hands, gripped a staff of grey driftwood so tightly the knuckles had split. The staff was plain enough that a fisher child might have dragged it home and been scolded for bringing rot into the house. Then it caught the workhouse shade and green moved inside it. Not light, sap, fire, memory. Senara felt every hair on her arms lift. The patients felt it too. Fevered heads turned. A child stopped crying. An old woman who had not spoken in 2 days whispered, "Green." One of the men behind Oren began to weep. The other stood with his arms wrapped around himself. Though the day was hot, he wore a bracelet on his left wrist, too small for him. Braidwork? A woman's bracelet, salt-stiff and dark with old water. He would not look at the staff. Oren stopped just inside the courtyard gate. Senara looked behind him once more, because the body does stupid things, even when the mind knows better. No Tavaro, no skybone line gleam, no sea-scarred giant limping through the gate with some horrible joke ready to protect everyone from how much blood he had lost. Only Oren and the staff. "You did not find him," Senara said. Oren's eyes moved to Lapo's mat. "No." The staff pulsed. Senara stepped in front of Lapo before she decided to do it. Oren looked back at her. His face was full of grief and certainty. The grief she trusted. The certainty she did not. "What is that?" she asked. "Help? What is it?" He came closer. Every step brought that green pressure with him. Gentle. That made it worse. It did not force the room to kneel. It made kneeling feel reasonable. "Oren, I found something that answered. You were meant to find Tavaro. I know. Where are the others?" The weeping man covered his face. The man with the bracelet said, 8 names. Oren's hand tightened on the staff. Senara heard the wood creak. "Where are the others?" she asked again. "The west water took them," Oren said. "How? Storm? More spawn? Fever? The road?" His voice stayed calm. "Do not ask me for clean words." The man with the bracelet laughed once, not loudly, not sanely. Oren did not look at him. Senara looked at the staff. Beneath the moving green, 8 pale knots marked the wood, pale as healed knuckles, pale as bone beneath skin. She disliked herself for counting. Lapo coughed behind her. The sound tore through every thought. Senara turned. His lips had gone almost entirely white. Salt dust clung to his eyelashes. His throat worked with no swallow. His chest hitched twice and failed to find a full breath. She moved to him. Oren moved too. "No," she said. He stopped. "Do not bring that thing near him. It can help. You do not know that." "I know. You believe." "Senara, do not say my name like a bandage." The staff pulsed again. The green inside it spread down the grain in thin lines. One of the pale knots brightened, then dimmed. The man with the bracelet whispered, "Say them before you use it again." Oren's face did not change. "Not now." "Where then?" Riva stepped between the man and Lapo's mat, not toward Oren, not against him. Between the fevered body and the words the room could not yet survive. "Out," she said. The man looked at her. Whatever he saw on her face made him step back. Lapo's fingers clawed weakly at the mat. His mouth opened. No sound came. His body was past asking. Oren's voice lowered. "It held sickness from me when it should have taken us all. It kept breath in my lungs after the storm. It can hold this fever back, or it can kill him faster. It will not. You cannot know that." His eyes shone. "No," she said, because she understood then. "Do not do this." Oren had always been most dangerous when he was calm. If you had one medicine left and his breath was going, would you stand there measuring pride? That is not the same. It is close enough for the mat he is lying on. The room watched them. Senara hated them for it. The sick, the apprentices, the exhausted mothers, the old men, the dying, all those eyes waiting for her to be either wise or cruel. Lapo's breath caught again. His spine arched. This time, no seizure followed. His body did not have the strength. Senara looked at the shelf. Fever leaf, salt bark, bone cups, cooling cloth, bitter root, smoke jars, dried red moss, everything she knew, everything that had failed to stop this. Then she looked at the staff. No healer should use a tool she did not understand. No healer should refuse a possible treatment, because fear had dressed itself as discipline. Both rules stood before her. and only one body lay between them. Her voice felt like scraped shell. "If his throat closes, I cut it open." Oren nodded. "If his heart stops, you take that staff away from my room. Yes, if he dies after this, you do not call his death holy." The certainty in Oren's face broke for the first time. Pain showed through. "Yes," he said. Senara stepped aside. Riva made a sound behind the screen. Senara did not turn. Oren knelt beside Lapo. The staff did not touch the mat. Its end hovered above the reed, and the green inside the wood gathered near Oren's hand. The workhouse cooled, not dramatically, not like winter. The heat simply loosened its fist. Sweat dried on Senara's neck. Lapo's breath, ragged and fast, slowed by one beat. Green threads moved from the staff. Not light, not roots either. Something between. They entered the air and vanished, then appeared again along Lapo's arms, faint under the skin. Senara lunged forward and grabbed his wrist, counting pulse. Still there. Fast. No. Slower. His mouth worked. She leaned close. "Water," he whispered. Every person in the workhouse began to cry, except Senara. She did not have time. "Cup?" she snapped. Eri brought one. Hands shaking so badly, Senara had to take it before the water spilled. She put the cup to Lapo's mouth and let a single drop wet his lips. "Slow," she said. He swallowed. Another drop. Swallow. Another. His throat stayed open. His pulse steadied. Not normal. Not safe. Better. Oren sat back on his heels. The staff in his hand had gone duller. Green withdrawn to the knots. Senara looked at him. He looked older than before. Not by years, by cost. The certainty remained, yet under it his face had hollowed as though something had taken a bite from the spirit and left the flesh standing. The man with the bracelet had stopped crying. His eyes were on one of the pale knots in the wood. Senara kept her fingers on Lapo's pulse. What did it take? She asked. Oren did not answer. That was when she began to fear the staff more than the fever. Lapo survived. Not at once. Not cleanly. The songs later made it sound as if Oren walked in with green fire, and the pale salt fled like a whipped dog. Songs were lazy. They did not count the next 3 nights, when Lapo's fever rose again, when Senara fed him water by drops, when he soiled the mat and wept because he knew it, when his hands shook too hard to grip a bowl. The staff did not cure him. The staff held something back long enough for his body to remember how to fight. That was enough. Enough changed everything. Oren took the Rootstaff to 3 houses the next day. Then 7. Then the fever ward near the old shrine. He never said cure. He was too careful at the beginning. He said shade. He said hold. He said the power moved best where people chose to stand together. Senara hated that phrase. It sounded like medicine while meaning almost nothing. The worst of it was that the staff worked. Not always. It did not help the woman whose lungs had already filled. It did nothing for the little boy who had stopped swallowing before Oren reached him. 2 old men died holding hands on the north mats, while the staff leaned against their doorway, green and useless. It worked enough. It cooled some fevers. It steadied some pulses. It made clean houses stay clean when sickness was brought too near. People who stood within the green shade and believed in it seemed less likely to sicken. People who did not believe sometimes survived anyway. Senara could not make the pattern obey. That was the cruelty of it. If the Rootstaff had been useless, she could have thrown Oren out. If it had been perfect, she could have surrendered to it and hated herself later. It was neither. It was power with rules she did not know, a cost no one would name, and results too visible for people to forget. The capital changed around it. At first, people came to the workhouse asking for Oren to stand in their doorways. Then they brought bowls, blankets, charms, hair from sick children, ash from dead ones. Green strips appeared at the road shrine. Someone carved a root sign into the harbor post. Someone else burned it away. The next morning, 3 more appeared. The near gods kept their old shrines. The root gained corners. Tavaro returned too late. He came through the workhouse gate after the worst had passed, carrying a more-spawn jaw across his shoulders like proof that absence had been labor. Senara remembered the jaw because it was enormous, black along the hinge, and still wet in places it should not have been wet. He looked proud for exactly one heartbeat. Then he saw the fever mats, the empty ones rolled along the wall, the burial baskets waiting for names, the green strips tied around 2 doorposts. Lapo sat upright near the crooked shelf, thin as reed, lips still pale, one hand around a cup Senara did not trust him to hold. Tavaro lowered the jaw. He did it carefully, as if sudden movement might wake the dead. No joke came. That frightened the room more than the jaw. Lapo looked at him. Tavaro's face changed. Hope entered too fast, before wisdom could stop it. He took one step. Lapo looked away. The jaw hit the floor, not hard. Tavaro caught it before the teeth cracked stone. Even then, even with the wound in his face, his body saved the dangerous thing from becoming more dangerous. Senara saw him see Lapo's turned head. Oren saw both. Riva stood behind the birth screen with clean cloth in her hands. She said nothing. Her mouth had the shape it took when she was holding back too many true sentences at once. Tavaro set the jaw down against the wall. "Where do you want it?" he asked. His voice had gone plain. Senara wanted to say outside. She wanted to say, burn it. She wanted to say, you should have been here, and you should have been west, and no body can survive being made into an answer for both. Instead, she pointed to the old waste shed. There, he nodded. He carried the jaw away. Lapo did not watch him go. The Roothouse began as a meeting place, because people disliked admitting they had made a shrine. It sat down the lower road above the oldest harbour stones, close enough to the main pier that sailors could stop in before or after loading, far enough from the workhouse that Senara could pretend the green light did not reach her walls at night. It had once been a net hall. Nets had hung from the beams. Children had hidden in the lower storage bins. People had argued about tides under its roof and come away still married, mostly. Now bowls of water lined the steps. Green cloth hung from the door. Oren spoke there softly. Softness made people lean in. He told them he had gone west, seeking the old protector, and found instead a power that did not require one man's arrival. He told them the islands were blessed, and still too small for mortal life. He told them the route had shown him land to the east, not dream, not metaphor, land. Red cliffs, black trees, birds with gold throats, a river mouth wide enough to swallow the inner harbour twice over. Senara argued at first. Visions are not maps. Oren's hands rested on the rootstaff. He looked at her as if she had asked a question he loved and would not obey. Neither were Tavaro's first islands until he raised them. People cannot eat certainty. They have been eating fear for generations. The sea beyond the roots is full of more spawn. Yes, that word should concern you more. It does not stop you. No, you sound like him. That made him pause. She had meant Tavaro, the old hero with his wounds, his task list, his maddening habit of walking into pain because someone would die if he did not. Oren looked toward the harbour, where green cloth had begun appearing on mast lines. Perhaps we all learned too much from him, he said. The Farbound name came later. At first they were the East Dreamers, then the root touched, then fools, depending on who spoke. The first person to say Farbound had meant it as an insult, Senara thought. Oren took it as a blessing, because movements were shameless that way. They could steal a thrown stone and build an altar from it. Lapo began spending time at the Roothouse once he could walk. Senara tried to stop him twice. The first time, he said he only wanted to thank Oren. The second time, he said he wanted to understand what had saved him. The third time, he did not tell her he was going. She followed. He stood among 20 others in the Roothouse, all of them with one hand held in the air near the staff, never touching unless invited. The green light painted their faces from below. Lapo's eyes were open, yet he was not seeing the room. Afterward, he found her in the doorway. "It is real," he said. His voice had changed after the fever, rougher when tired, too thin when afraid. Senara crossed her arms to keep from reaching for him. Many real things kill people. You sound afraid. I'm afraid. His face softened. That was worse. He looked at her, as if she had become one of the patients, as if fear were a symptom he could outgrow for both of them. I saw it, he said. The eastern land. You saw something. Cliffs black at the base and red above. Birds with gold throats. A river mouth wide enough to hold the inner harbor. The air smelled different. Dreams can smell. This was not a dream. Fever visions feel real too. I know fever. That silenced her. Lapo knew fever now in his body. She had no right to use it as an easy dismissal. He stepped closer. Senara, there is room there. Room. That word began appearing everywhere. Room for new houses. Room for fields that did not have to be coaxed from volcanic soil and coral dust. Room for children to leave one another without being called lost. Room for graves that did not compete with roots and rain trenches. Room for a people no longer organized around whether Tavaro could reach them in time. Senara understood the hunger. She did. That was the part no one forgave her for. It would have been simpler if she had thought the Farbound stupid. She had treated stupidity. This was not that. They were grieving. Grief wanted distance. Grief wanted proof that the place of pain was not the whole world. They were also being led by a staff that made doubt feel like weakness. The night Lapo told Riva he was leaving, Senara had already known, not because he confessed. He had become too faithful to confess. Confession invited argument, and argument delayed destiny. She knew because his hands had changed. People packing to leave touched objects differently. A bowl became a question. A knife became weight. A doorway became memory before the feet crossed it. Lapo had stood in the workhouse that afternoon and looked at the crooked shelf for too long. He touched the warped edge once with his thumb. Then he pretended he had not. After that, Senara sent the runner. The memory left her as the oil bowl sputtered in the present courtyard. Tavaro was watching her. He had been silent long enough that his silence had become another patient in need of attention. What did it do? He asked. No swagger in his voice. Senara did not pretend not to understand. The rootstaff? He nodded. She picked up a clean bandage and came to sit beside him. His wrist was worse after the walk. Of course it was. The stitch had held. Barely. Blood had seeped beneath the salve. She unwound the outer cloth. The first rule is that I do not know its rules, she said. That is a bad first rule. It held back fever. His eyes moved toward her. She kept her focus on the wrist. Not always. Not cleanly. It did not raise the dead. It did not replace water, shade, rest, or a body with enough strength left to fight. Senara, it worked. The words left her and made the night heavier. Tavaro looked toward the harbor. She cleaned around the seam. He did not flinch. That told her he was listening with more than pride. Oren brought it back when he went looking for you, she said. His jaw tightened. I know, she said. You were in the west reach. I should have been here. Yes. He looked at her. She tied the bandage tighter than kindness required. You should have been here. You also should have been in the west reach. That is the problem with being one man people have mistaken for an answer. The bandage pulled flat. She tied it off. Tavaro's hand flexed once. Lapo was sick, she said. Tavaro went still. Pale salt. Badly. His gaze moved to her face, and for once there was no question he could make into a joke. The staff held him long enough to live, Senara said. Maybe I would have saved him without it. Maybe his body had already turned. Maybe the timing made a liar out of medicine. Tavaro closed his eyes. He thinks it saved him, she said. So does Oren. So do most of the people loading those ships. Most. Yes. He opened his eyes. She saw the calculation begin and hated it. Tavaro could look at a harbor and count hull strength. Wind, rope, food weight, distance, monster sign, storm sign, human foolishness. He could weigh bodies before they became bodies. Senara needed that mind. That was why she hated herself. Do you know why they will not hear you? She asked. Because they think I am a cage. Yes, he took that too cleanly, because the staff gave them something you cannot give them, she said. I can raise land. It showed them ground you did not raise. His face changed. She could have cut him less deeply with a knife. He looked at her with a tiredness that belonged to centuries. Not the night. You always say the part meant to hurt enough to work. Senara looked down. The bandage tail lay between her fingers. Yes, she said. Below, voices rose from the harbour. A chant now. Low, not joy. Shared labour. The Farbound were moving water casks by rhythm. One line passing full jars toward the ships and empty jars back. First light had begun its approach, though the sky remained dark. Senara stood and crossed to the workhouse door. Inside, patients slept or pretended. Eri sat beside the birth screen, head nodding, a cup loose in her hand. Marel sharpened a knife slowly near the medicine shelves. He had his shoulders turned toward the courtyard, listening. Everyone was listening. Everyone had been listening since Pale Salt began, waiting for gods, waiting for Tavaro, waiting for Oren, waiting for the staff. Waiting was another sickness. It ate judgment first. She turned back to Tavaro. I cannot stop Lapo. Tavaro said nothing. If I go to him, he will hear fever mats. If Riva goes, he will hear the alley. If the council goes, he will hear old men protecting old stones. If I go, Tavaro said, he hears the cage. Yes, excellent. We have chosen the worst messenger who can still make people pause. I cannot stand well. You stand loudly, Senara. The word was soft. Do not ask me. Ask me. Tell me I am still useful. Do not make me prove it. She walked back to him. The courtyard stones were cool under her bare feet. At some point in the night, she had kicked off her sandals and forgotten them, which meant exhaustion had begun stealing small facts. Tavaro watched her like a wounded animal watching an approaching hand. Trust and fear in the same body. She sat beside him again. I am going to ask something wrong, she said. His breath moved carefully under the rib binding. I know. No. Listen. I am going to ask because I am afraid. Because I love Lapo. Because I know the sea will kill some of them if they sail like this. Because I saw what the staff did and still do not trust it. Because I have kept bodies alive all my life, and cannot bear that his might become one more thing I failed to hold. Her throat tightened. Tavaro did not reach for her. She was grateful. She would not have survived gentleness from him in that moment. Tavaro, she said. His face changed at his name, just slightly. He had so many titles that the name itself could still cut through him. Stop Lapo. The words were smaller than she expected. Not grand, not commanding. Tavaro closed his eyes. The child mark under his binding gave no light she could see, yet his hand moved toward it and stopped before touching. When he opened his eyes again, the old humor was gone. How? He asked. If he will listen, make him listen. And if he will not? Senara looked at his hands, the bound wrist, the scarred palm, the fingers that could tear rope, stone, hull, throat. Then you come back. His face went still. He may die. Yes. The word hurt her. You still come back, she said. Do not come back saying, I told you to do worse. Tavaro nodded once. That should have comforted her. It did not. She knew nods. She knew bodies. She knew the way his jaw had set, and how his shoulders had gathered pain around purpose. He would try too hard. Tavaro always tried too hard where love and danger met. He stood too fast. Pain went through him at once. She saw it strike ribs, thigh, wrist, back. His face whitened under sun-dark skin. His left hand opened and closed once. For a breath, he leaned toward her without meaning to. Senara rose with him. No, he said. I said nothing. You are about to steady me. You need steadying. I need to know whether I can cross the courtyard without folding. Can you? He took one step, then another. The limp was worse. His breath dragged. Blood threatened the fresh bandage before he reached the gate. Yes, he said. Senara did not laugh. He turned back at the courtyard threshold. Tavaro, she said. He looked at her. There were too many things to say. Do not touch the staff. Do not kill Oren. Do not make Lapo hate you more. Do not come back with blood that medicine cannot wash off. Do not prove them right. All of that crowded behind her teeth. The healer in her chose the sentence with instruction in it. If the rootstaff gets close enough that your wrist starts to burn, step away. His bound hand flexed. You felt it. I saw it. Of course you did. This is not pride. Step away. He smiled then, faint and awful. I am famous for stepping away from trouble. You are famous because songs lie. Fair. He turned toward the lower road. The harbor chant carried up the hill. Senara stood in the courtyard and watched him go, one damaged step after another, toward the people who feared him, toward the boy she loved, toward the old man with the green staff, toward the choice she had asked him to enter, because she had run out of ways to keep bodies alive. When he disappeared beyond the healer's garden, she pressed both hands to her mouth, not to pray, to keep from calling him back.
Here, boil the cloth. Here, hold the cup. One bell from the harbor, one breath giving up. Senara heard the question fall. What do we do tonight? Tavaro sat with blood at his wrist, too large for the courtyard light. Below the loading bell kept time, one cold and hollow stone. That bell was choice in eye and tongue, and choice cuts deeper than bone. Hold the cup, wash the mouth, turn the body slow. Do not lie to the living when the dead already know. Pale salt on the mouth, white fire in the breath, water by the drop in a room too full of death. Green roots in the doorway, old gods far away. If help comes late, what price does it pay? It started with a fisher laugh, cracked lips, pale as foam. He said the sea had climbed inside, his wife dragged him home. By dawn there were 9 fever mats, by week 3 names were ash. Children failed in thirsty sleep, young hearts broke last. Boiled cloth, cooling stone, bitter leaf and prayer. Senara counted every breath and found no answer there. Pale salt on the mouth, white fire in the breath, water by the drop in a room too full of death. Green roots in the doorway, old gods far away. If help comes late, what price does it pay? Oren sailed west for Tavaro, 11 crossed the reef. 3 came back with salt-torn feet and a staff alive with green. No tidebreaker at the gate, no giant with a joke, only root light through the wood and a cost no one spoke. Lapo burned on a reed mat, Revator cloth behind the screen. Senara said no holy deaths, no pretty name for grief. Oren held the rootstaff near, green threads found the skin. Lapo whispered water once, and the room forgot to breathe. Pale salt on the mouth, white fire in the breath, water by the drop in a room too full of death. Green roots in the doorway, old gods far away. If help comes late, what price does it pay? It did not cure the fever, came back too late, with the monster jaw in hand. Lapo looked away from him, and silence split the land. Now ships below are loading, first light stains the sea. Senara says, "Stop, Lapo, then come back clean to me." Eya, eya, harbor calls. Eya, eya, green roots glow. He walks toward the boy she loves, and she cannot call him home.